almost the equivalent, but staffing high, so they may have other resources available to them that we don't have. For example, they may have more school counselors, they may have more, they definitely have more assistant superintendents, maybe a different central office structure. Does that answer your question? I don't think so. Assistant superintendent. So here's the cost per pupil, and this is sort of where that theory holds true as well. Is, in terms of cost per pupil or expenditures per student, it is $18,644, which is an increase of $100, or 0.5% from the prior year. Last 2-year periods, from FY18 to FY20, our cost per pupil was the lowest in the region. And I think that kind of goes back to an earlier conversation. 2.3% as compared to, for example, Loudon, which had the highest increase of the cost per pupil at 11.3%. So we have really been able to maintain a cost per pupil that has been within a range, and I think part of the main driver for us in maintaining that cost per pupil from last year was that $600,000 reduction that we took in positions across the some factors that are impacting our projections, and as you may recall, projections, not unlike I think where Ms. Bawa gets some of her information, is from the Weldon Cooper Center out at the University of Virginia. They do project out 15 years. We're excited that they've got newly geocoded birth data that shows the number of births here in the city of Falls Church, and they also look at our division-wide progression of students over time. The one thing that's really important to note in this projected data is that there's no change in the projections based on local housing or economy that's factored into these enrollment projections. So, as for example, excuse me, as Founders Row comes online and at the 10-acre site comes online, those two, for example, are not part of the projections that come from Weldon Cooper. And I think that's important to note as we think about our projections. So we are looking at 2021 projections by grade. And here let me just kind of orient you to this a little bit. On the top row is the projections by grade. So if you look at it for kindergarten, we are 168 kindergarten students next year. So if you look at it right below, you'll see minus 12. That means that we are looking at 12 kindergartners than we have this. I'll also share with you that kindergarten is the hardest grade to project because we don't know who's coming to us. We have a number of folks that are in private preschool. We have a number of students that are coming to us from JTP, but at the end of the day, we don't know. So as you may recall last year in our budget process, part of our cutting of the positions was we cut a kindergarten teacher and we cut a kindergarten para. And at the end of the summer, we ended up having to put that kindergarten teacher back and that para back and find money elsewhere to cover that cost. And we were able to do that through a position reserve that we created. But the point of that story is we just don't know how many kindergartners are going to come. So we are projecting 168. We'll see kind of where we are. First grade, 187. Second grade, 173. And you can follow across. The big nuggets here are at the very end. You will see the grand total. We are going to grow by a total of 40 students. So they are projecting us at 2,698 students. And you'll see the major areas of growth here are at George Mason High School. We're growing by 48 students. At Mary Ellen Henderson, we are declining enrollment by 22. TJ, we're growing by 9, and Mount Daniel growing by 1. And those, quite frankly, if you look at them, are primarily because we have progressions of classes. Some classes are larger than others, so as classes progress, the movement of students across is important. The other piece that, if you do the analysis of these data, one of the things you'll see is that a lot of our kids are coming back to us in high school that might not have been with us for high school, or for middle school, or for elementary. And we also are seeing some numbers gaining at our middle school. So one of the things that that might jump out to you, and I'll just sort of share this as an anomaly, Sixth grade, which we are projecting at 171, is declining by 65 students. You might say why? And that's because, remember, that super huge class that's coming through is progressing to seventh grade of 250. So Mary Ellen Henderson's seventh grade class is going to grow by 41 students. So you kind of see how these numbers kind of interplay with each other. The Cooper projection accuracy is always something that comes into question. I won't linger on this too long, but I do want to, in this chart, show the right-hand column, which is the actual versus projected as a percentage of accuracy. And you'll see that there's a range of probably 6, being somewhere in the area of 95.1%, the highest being 102.8%. But all of that into account, those numbers are still relatively close. I think one of the greatest anomalies that you saw in actuals versus projected was in 2015. And you might remember that. It was the year that 128 students arrived. So that weren't projected for. That was very painful, I think, for a lot of people. So we're hoping that this year's projection is more accurate. And just by the way, this current year's projection, we actually made a modification in the budget process. And we were able to get the projection to within one student this year. So we're pretty excited about the methodology. So like the general government, we have some salary cost drivers that are important to us as well. So the first is compensation. We are looking at providing a step increase. Let's discuss. We're not looking at providing anything yet, but we are looking at these as drivers. Looking at a step increase for all employees. This is the commitment that public educational institutions make to their public employees, and that is that there's a step in grade system. It's used across America. It's used across the region, and this is where I think we begin to see some of those cost drivers with respect to general government versus the schools come into play. So for us to provide a one-step increase to our employees, which is around an average of about 3%, costs us about $1.1 million. We also, if we were to look at doing some sort of cost of living adjustment like we did last year, each 1% of a cost of living adjustment would cost, because of the numbers of employees we have, roughly $400,000 for each 1% of salary. Those are some of the salary pieces. The second are benefit drivers. These are interesting and unfortunately interesting, and one of them is new. And the new one is the Virginia retirement system. The rates for the VRS are set by the VRS and are recommended by the actuaries, and they are recommending that there increase from 16.68% to 17.83%, and that is looking at a mandatory employer expenditure for us at an additional $300,000. This increase is resulting from the assumed rate of return from 7% to 6.75%. The employee portion will remain at roughly 5%. So what we're showing here is just the employer portion, which is about $300,000. They're also looking at increasing the cost of life insurance through the VRS from 1.31% to 1.34%. That's a fixed driver for us that I don't think we're going to be able to get around. Another fixed driver for us that we're planning for is a roughly 10% increase in both the employer and the employee rate. Health insurance, we do carry the same insurance plan and share with the general government. It's a nice efficiency that we have. About a $300,000 increase on the schools portion for that healthcare cost. Some additional needs. This is what you'll see on the right side is a Google sheet that we put together and we're able to send out to all of our division directors and all of our principals to take a look at. And what we've asked them to do is do an analysis of their program, identify where they may have some additional needs for their programs that go beyond employee compensation and beyond additional costs for VRS and healthcare that are specifically about supporting students. So this is where we begin to get into some program expansion. So here you'll see under supportive programs for students, you'll see instructional resources to drive student achievement. So for example, we currently have a math specialist that serves all of our schools to support all of our teachers in professional development to support the math program. We saw incredible gains this year in our math program, all of our subgroups, so all of our students that are in ESOL, kids all made gains due to the incredible work of Jen Fessenden, who's our division-wide specialist in mathematics. We see a general decline in English language arts and reading across the state, and we are not immune to that. It may be 1% a year, but 1% a year over 10 years is not an insignificant number. So one of the things that we are looking at is the potential for an English language arts resource teacher or resource specialist, just like our math resource specialists that can work and professionally develop our teachers. Certainly, social emotional learning is something, and support for our kids is something that we're paying very close attention to. So we are looking at additional social workers, school counselors, behavior support, parent liaisons to support our students. And then there's always the rising costs of increased material supplies and services, particularly with the new high school coming online. We know that we're going to have about 100,000 square feet more to clean, and as a consequence of that, we're going to need some new people to clean that brand new building. So that will be an additional cost that I would anticipate we're going to see. But the really, I think, important component to this sheet that you see on the right-hand side is that we are really tying all the requests that the schools are making to our placemat. So you will see that they are tied directly to International Baccalaureate for all gaps for caring community and culture. We asked the principals and directors to write a statement about how it connects to that, and then those requests ultimately align to our triennial plan, which has been adopted by the school board as well. So one of the things that we're really excited about this year, like we have been in the past, is that we have incredible alignment from top to bottom and bottom to top. So there's a great efficiency with the dollars that we receive, and there aren't any wasted movements as we move forward with student achievement. And then the last thing that we have on here that I'll just sort of dovetail into the city managers, but maybe with a little bit more detail because it's got some school board dates in there as well. Our dates for budget development, some of the things that the city manager mentioned are in here, but we have some budget work sessions additionally to that. Our public hearing budget work session and adoption of the school's budget happens on May 5th. So with that, Madam Chair and Mr. Mayor, council members, and school board members, I'll wrap up my what was to be a brief presentation. Thank you very much, and I certainly welcome any questions that you might have.
Open it up to our city council colleagues. Do you have any questions or comments on the budget presentation?
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Smith?
Sure. Thanks a lot for this presentation. So, am I assuming then that you're projecting 40 students more next year than this year? Is that the projection for student growth?
That's correct.
Okay. Secondly, I'd like to focus on slide number 7. This certainly illustrates the effect of the local composite index, which is established by the state. I'd be interested if you could calculate what our school transfer would be from the general government if we had the LCI of Fairfax County, Loudoun County, and Manassas City. I'd be interested in seeing what those numbers are, because my understanding is that Loudoun County's average household income is equal to or exceeds or slightly below Falls Church's average household income. And I think as we looked at this several years ago, the reason why the LCI is so unfairly skewed is because it's rigged based upon real estate costs and not other more reasonable standards. So I guess I'd like to see what the true bite is in connection with that, rather than just percentages, because percentages tend to get lost. And then secondly, do we have anything in our legislative program that asks our elected representatives to at least begin to address the LCI issue?
To your first question, we certainly can add that to our budget question.